Ambassador Robert Hayes stepped through the sliding doors of the Galactic Council chamber. His heart pounded beneath his formal uniform, but his face remained calm. This was humanity's moment. After decades of watching alien ships cross Earth's skies, humans were finally joining the greatest civilization in the galaxy. The chamber was massive. Crystalline walls stretched upward into darkness, pulsing with soft blue light. 300 different alien species sat in curved rows, their forms ranging from towering insectoid creatures to beings that looked like floating clouds of gas. Some had multiple eyes. Others had none at all. Robert had studied them for months, but seeing them all together still took his breath away. "Welcome, human," a voice echoed through the chamber. Robert looked up to see Speaker Valen, a tall being with silver skin and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on his face. His species, the Kalari, had ruled the council for 10,000 years. "You stand before the oldest alliance in the galaxy. Do you come in peace?" "We do," Robert said, his voice steady. "Earth seeks only friendship and knowledge." Murmurs rippled through the assembled aliens. Some sounded approving. Others sounded skeptical. Robert had expected this. Humans were young compared to most council species. Earth had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Many of these civilizations had been exploring space for millennia. "Your application has been reviewed," Valen continued. "Your technology is adequate. Your culture shows promise. But there is one final test. All species must undergo the mind scan before joining the council." Robert nodded. He had been briefed about this. Every species in the council possessed some level of telepathy. It ranged from weak to incredibly strong, but everyone had it. The mind scan was supposed to measure a species' psychic potential and ensure they had peaceful intentions. "I am ready," Robert said. 3 beings floated forward. They looked like jellyfish made of pure light, their bodies shimmering with rainbow colors. These were the council's psychic evaluators. Their entire species existed as mental energy, capable of reading thoughts across entire star systems. Robert stood still as they surrounded him. He felt nothing. No tingling. No pressure. No voice in his head. He had been told the scan would take only a few seconds. The seconds stretched into a minute, then 2. The evaluators began moving faster, circling him with what looked like increasing urgency. The light they emitted flickered and dimmed. "Speaker Valen," the lead evaluator's voice sounded confused. "We have a problem." The chamber fell silent. Every alien leaned forward, watching intently. "What kind of problem?" Valen asked. "We sense nothing," the evaluator said. "This human's mind is completely blank. No psychic signature. No telepathic presence. Not even the faintest echo. It is as if he does not exist in the mental realm at all." Shocked whispers filled the chamber. Several aliens stood up from their seats. Robert heard words in dozens of languages, most of which his translator earpiece converted to phrases like "impossible" and "never seen before." "Perhaps your equipment is malfunctioning?" Robert suggested carefully. "Our abilities do not malfunction," the evaluator replied, sounding almost offended. "We have scanned billions of beings across thousands of worlds. Every living creature with a complex brain produces some psychic energy. But you are a void. Complete emptiness." Valen's 3 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought among his people. "Is this normal for all humans?" Robert felt the weight of 300 species staring at him. "Yes, Speaker. Humans cannot read minds. We never developed telepathy. We communicate only through speech, writing, and body language." "Fascinating," a serpentine creature hissed from the left side of the chamber. "A species that evolved without the mind gift. How did you survive?" "We adapted in other ways," Robert said. "We developed complex spoken languages. We created technology to communicate across distances. We learned to read facial expressions and tone of voice." "Primitive methods," another alien muttered. Robert bristled but kept his temper in check. He had been warned that some council members looked down on less psychically advanced species. Humans would have to prove their worth through actions, not abilities they did not possess. The evaluators retreated, conferring among themselves in flashes of colored light. Speaker Valen consulted with several other high-ranking council members. Robert stood alone in the center of the chamber, feeling very small and very human. Finally, Valen raised one long-fingered hand. "The council has made its decision. While humans are unusual, we find no reason to deny them membership. Your species will be classified as psychic nulls. You will be monitored closely during your integration period. But you are welcome among us." Relief flooded through Robert. "Thank you, Speaker. Humanity will prove worthy of this honor. See that you do, Valen said. His tone was not unkind, but Robert detected caution in it. Your lack of psychic presence is highly unusual. In 50,000 years of Council history, no member species has ever been completely void. You are the first. Robert smiled politely and bowed. Around him, aliens returned to their seats, already losing interest in the strange humans. They saw Earth as a curiosity, nothing more. A primitive species that would need guidance and protection. None of them suspected the truth. Dr. Emily Foster knelt in the red dust of a dead planet. Her environmental suit protected her from the frozen atmosphere, but nothing could protect her from the weight of what she had just discovered. 6 months had passed since Earth joined the Galactic Council. During that time, Emily's archaeological team had been assigned to explore abandoned worlds at the galaxy's edge. It was boring work mostly. Until today. The tablet in her gloved hands was ancient beyond measure. Its surface glowed faintly with power that had lasted for 200,000 years. The writing on it had taken her 3 days to decode. Now that she understood the words, she wished she had never found it. Dr. Foster, are you all right? Her assistant, James Park, called over the radio. You have been silent for 10 minutes. Emily's mouth was dry. James, get me a direct link to Council headquarters. Priority 1. Do it now. That will take hours to establish. What is so urgent? Just do it, Emily snapped. Her hands trembled as she photographed the tablet from every angle. And send these images to Ambassador Hayes immediately. Tell him we have found something terrible. The tablet told a story. Not a pleasant story of ancient wisdom or lost culture. This was a horror story that had been deliberately buried and forgotten. 200,000 years ago, the galaxy had been home to thousands of thriving civilizations. They had built wonders that made the current council look primitive. Great cities floated between stars. Vast networks of psychic energy connected billions of minds across space itself. It was a golden age. Then they came. The tablet called them the Hollows, beings with no psychic presence. Creatures that existed as complete voids in the mental realm. They appeared at the galaxy's edge and began hunting. Not for resources or territory. They hunted psychic beings for sport. The ancient civilizations tried to fight back. But how could telepathic species battle an enemy they could not sense? The Hollows moved through space like ghosts. By the time defenders realized they were under attack, it was too late. Entire worlds went silent. Billions died. The war lasted for 1,000 years. The galaxy's population dropped from trillions to billions. Great civilizations collapsed into scattered survivors. The psychic networks that connected the stars shattered into fragments. Finally, the remaining species united. They could not defeat the Hollows through conventional warfare, so they built a trap. At the galaxy's edge, they constructed a massive quantum barrier. Then they lured the Hollows toward it. When the enemy crossed the threshold, the barrier activated. It cut off an entire section of space, sealing the Hollows away in a prison between dimensions. The survivors celebrated. They had won. The enemy was gone forever. Or so they believed. But the tablet revealed something else. Something that made Emily's blood run cold. The ancient civilizations had found captured Hollow technology. They had studied it. And they had found genetic samples. According to the records, the Hollows were not aliens in the traditional sense. They had evolved from psychic species. But something had happened to them. A mutation, perhaps, or deliberate genetic modification. They had lost all psychic ability. The absence of mental energy had driven them mad with isolation. Unable to connect with other minds, they had become predators who destroyed what they could no longer share. The descriptions were detailed. The Hollows had been bipedal. 2 arms, 2 legs. Forward-facing eyes. They had used tools and weapons. They had communicated through sound rather than thought. Emily read the final section 3 times to make certain she understood correctly. The ancient text described the Hollows' home world. A small planet in an isolated star system. Blue oceans. Green continents. 1 large moon. The coordinates matched Earth's location precisely. She stood up so quickly she nearly fell over in the low gravity. This could not be right. This could not be possible. But the evidence was clear. The description was too specific to be coincidence. Humans matched every characteristic of the Hollows. The ancient enemy. The species that had nearly destroyed all civilized life in the galaxy. Dr. Foster. James's voice crackled over the radio. I have established contact with Council headquarters. They are standing by for your transmission. Emily activated her suit's camera and began recording. Her voice shook as she spoke. This is Dr. Emily Foster on Archaeological Site 17. I am transmitting images of a tablet discovered in the ruins. The text describes a war that occurred 200,000 years ago. The enemy was called the Hollows. They were psychic voids who attempted to exterminate all telepathic species. She paused, gathering courage for what came next. Based on the physical descriptions and genetic analysis in these records, I believe the Hollows and humans share common ancestry. The Council needs to see this immediately. Emily ended the transmission and sat down heavily on a nearby rock. Within hours, her message would reach the Council. Within days, every species in the galaxy would know the truth. Humans were not curious newcomers. They were the descendants of the ancient enemy. The monsters who had nearly ended civilization itself had returned. And the Council had welcomed them with open arms. Emily looked up at the stars. Somewhere among those distant lights, Earth orbited peacefully. Its people had no idea what storm was coming. Ambassador Hayes would need time to prepare a defense. But what defense could humanity possibly offer against an accusation supported by 200,000 years of evidence? She checked her equipment and prepared to return to the ship. The tablet would need to be transported carefully. It was evidence in what might become humanity's trial. Or its execution. Admiral Jack Morgan stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiance, staring at the view screen with growing dread. He had been a military officer for 30 years. He had seen combat. He had faced enemy fleets and survived impossible odds. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for this moment. The quantum barrier at the galaxy's edge was failing. For 200,000 years, that barrier had held. The ancient civilizations had built it to contain the Hollows, sealing them away in a pocket dimension where they could never threaten the galaxy again. It had been maintained by automated systems that drew power from the fabric of space itself. Those systems should have lasted forever. They were collapsing. "Sir, the barrier is down to 20% integrity," Lieutenant Sarah Chin reported from the tactical station. "We are detecting massive energy fluctuations. Something is pushing through from the other side. Can we reinforce it?" Morgan asked, though he already knew the answer. "Negative, sir. The technology is beyond our understanding. We can only watch." Morgan clenched his fists. 3 days ago, Dr. Emily Foster's discovery had reached the Council. The revelation that humans might be descended from the Hollows had caused panic. Dozens of species had demanded humanity's immediate expulsion. Some had called for worse. Earth's embassy on the Council station had been locked down for protection. And now this, as if the universe had a cruel sense of timing. "Barrier collapse in 3 minutes, Chin announced. "Sir, the Council Defense Fleet is moving into position. 2,000 ships. Every major species has sent their best." Morgan watched as the greatest armada in galactic history assembled. Massive dreadnoughts from the Kalari. Swift cruisers from the insectoid Vrex. Bioships grown by the aquatic Delmar. They formed a wall of metal and energy across hundreds of thousands of kilometers. The human fleet was there too. 50 ships. Small and primitive compared to the Council vessels. But they were humanity's contribution to the defense. Morgan's contribution. 1 minute to barrier collapse, Chin said quietly. The view screen showed the barrier as a shimmering wall of blue light stretching across space. Cracks appeared in it. Then larger fractures. The light began to pulse irregularly, like a dying heartbeat. Then it shattered. For a moment, there was only darkness beyond. Morgan held his breath. Perhaps nothing would come through. Perhaps the Hollows had died during their imprisonment. Perhaps. "Contacts!" Chin shouted. "Hundreds of them. Thousands. Sir, they are everywhere." The ships that emerged were nightmares. Biomechanical horrors that looked half-grown and half-built. Organic tissue wrapped around metal frames. Pulsing organs visible through transparent sections. They moved with disturbing grace, like predators stalking prey. "The Council fleet is engaging," Chin reported. Morgan watched as 2,000 ships opened fire. Energy beams and missiles filled the void. Several hollow ships exploded in brilliant flashes. For a moment, it seemed the defense might hold. Then the Council ships stopped. Not some of them. All of them. 2,000 vessels simply went dark and began drifting. Their weapons fell silent. Their engines cut out. They floated lifelessly in space like abandoned toys. "What happened?" Morgan demanded. "Did they hit the ships with some kind of weapon?" Chen's fingers flew over her console. "No, sir. No weapons discharge detected. The ships are intact. But life signs are, sir, the crews are dead. All of them. Billions of beings just died simultaneously." Morgan felt ice in his veins. "How?" I do not know. Wait. I am picking up energy readings from the hollow ships. They are emitting some kind of psychic radiation. Massive amounts. It is feeding on something. Understanding hit Morgan like a physical blow. The hollows were not attacking with weapons. They were using psychic energy itself as a weapon. Their ships were feeding on the mental energy of the Council crews. Every telepathic being in the fleet had their mind torn apart in seconds. Sir, the hollow fleet is changing course, Shin said. They are heading toward the Council station. Toward the core systems. Sir, they are targeting us specifically. A group of 50 ships is breaking away and accelerating toward our position. Morgan stared at the approaching vessels. Why target the human fleet? They were the smallest force here. The least threatening. Unless the hollows remembered. 200,000 years ago humans had helped defeat them. Or perhaps humans had been hollows who turned against their own kind. Either way, the enemy recognized humanity as a threat. They were coming to finish what they had started so long ago. All ships, battle stations, Morgan ordered. His voice was calm despite his racing heart. Load all weapons. Prepare for close engagement. And someone get me Ambassador Hayes on the line. Tell him the Council fleet is gone. Tell him we are all that stands between the hollows and the core worlds. Sir, Shin said quietly, we are 50 ships against thousands. We cannot win this. Maybe not, Morgan agreed. But we can hurt them. We can slow them down. And unlike everyone else in that Council fleet, we are immune to their psychic attacks. Why are we immune, sir? Morgan smiled grimly. Because we are psychic voids, Lieutenant. The same thing that made us outcasts makes us survivors. The hollows feed on mental energy. We do not have any to feed on. The enemy ships grew larger on the view screen. Morgan could see details now. Twisted metal. Pulsing organs. Weapons that looked like living things. All ships, fire at will, Morgan commanded. The human fleet opened up with everything they had. Missiles streaked across space. Railguns fired metal slugs at relativistic speeds. Energy weapons painted the void with light. The Battle of Threshold had begun. 50 human ships against an enemy that had nearly destroyed the galaxy once before. The odds were impossible. The situation was hopeless. But humans had never been good at accepting defeat. Morgan watched as his fleet tore into the enemy formation. The hollows expected psychic coordination. They expected predictable patterns. Instead they faced chaos. Human captains made decisions independently, using tactics that made no logical sense. Ships appeared where they should not be. Attacks came from unexpected angles. 3 hours later the human fleet still fought. Battered. Damaged. But still fighting. And the hollows had stopped advancing. General William Carter slammed his fist on the conference table hard enough to make the water glasses jump. His face was red with anger and his voice shook with barely contained rage. Let them burn. Every single one of those alien bastards treated us like primitives. Now they come crawling to us for help? Now they want humanity to save them. Ambassador Robert Hayes sat across from him in the emergency government session. Around the table sat Earth's most powerful leaders. President Sarah Collins at the head. Military commanders on one side. Scientists and diplomats on the other. They had been arguing for 2 hours and getting nowhere. General Carter, I understand your anger, Robert said carefully. But we need to think about what we are doing here. I know exactly what we are doing, Carter shot back. We are deciding whether to save the species who accused us of being ancient monsters. The species who wanted to expel us from the Council. Some of them called for our extermination, Ambassador. Our extermination. And now their fleets are destroyed and they need us. Well, too bad. Several people around the table nodded in agreement. Robert could see the anger in their faces. The hurt. Humanity had reached out to the stars with hope and friendship. In return, they had been treated with suspicion and contempt. Now the same species who looked down on humans were begging for rescue. They deserve what they get, a military advisor muttered. Do they? A quiet voice asked. Everyone turned to look at Dr. Emily Foster. She sat at the far end of the table looking exhausted. She had returned from the archaeological site only 12 hours ago. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but her gaze was steady. Dr. Foster, President Collins said, you have been studying the ancient records. Do you have something to add? Emily stood up slowly. She activated the holographic display in the center of the table. Images appeared. Ancient text. Genetic diagrams. Historical reconstructions. I have spent the last 3 days analyzing every piece of data from that tablet, Emily said. I have been trying to understand what really happened 200,000 years ago. And I have found something important. Something that changes everything. She pulled up a genetic chart. This is hollow DNA from the ancient samples. And this is modern human DNA. They are similar, yes, but not identical. The relationship is more complex than we thought. What are you saying? Carter demanded. I am saying that humans are not the hollows, Emily replied. We are the descendants of their victims. The room fell silent. Robert leaned forward. Explain. Emily changed the display to show a timeline. 200,000 years ago, Earth was home to early humans. But these humans were different from us. They were psychic. Not strongly psychic, but they had the ability. They could sense each other's emotions. They could share simple thoughts. They were part of the galactic community. She paused, gathering strength for what came next. Then the hollows arrived. They came to Earth like they came to every other world. They hunted the psychics. And they were very good at hunting. More images appeared. Ancient cave paintings from Earth. Primitive art showing figures fleeing from dark shapes. Robert had seen these images before. Archaeologists had always assumed they depicted tribal warfare or natural disasters. But now, looking at them with new understanding, he saw something else. He saw humans running from an enemy they could not sense or predict. The hollows nearly wiped out humanity, Emily continued. 99% of the human population died. Only a tiny group survived. And they survived because they were different. They were the ones born without psychic ability. The voids. The hollows could not sense them. Could not find them. So they lived. She changed the image again to show genetic mutation patterns. Over thousands of generations, the survivors evolved. The psychic immunity became stronger. It became the dominant trait. Because anyone born with even the faintest psychic ability was still vulnerable. They were still prey. Natural selection favored the voids. We did not choose to become what we are. Evolution forced it on us. General Carter stared at the display. Some of the anger had faded from his face, replaced by something else. Understanding, perhaps. Or horror. We evolved to survive the hollows, Emily said softly. Our ancestors spent thousands of years learning to fight an enemy that could not be sensed. They developed complex spoken language because they could not use telepathy. They created elaborate strategies and deceptions because straightforward tactics failed against an enemy who could read minds. Everything that makes us human, everything that makes us different from other species, exists because of the hollows. So we are not the monsters, President Collins said slowly. We are the survivors of the monsters. Yes, Emily confirmed. And that is why we have a choice to make now. The hollows have returned. The council species are defenseless against them. But we are not. We were literally evolved to fight this enemy. We carry in our genes the accumulated survival strategies of thousands of generations of humans who battled the hollows and lived. Robert stood up. Dr. Foster is right. This is not about revenge or justice. This is about survival. If we let the council fall, the hollows will not stop. They will spread across the galaxy. And eventually they will come for Earth. We can fight them now, alongside allies, or we can fight them alone later. What are you proposing? Carter asked. A deal, Robert said. We share everything. Our military tactics. Our strategies. Our way of fighting without telepathy. We train their soldiers. We retrofit their ships. We teach them how to battle an enemy they cannot read. And in exchange? President Collins asked. Recognition, Robert replied firmly. A permanent seat on the council with full authority. An end to being treated as inferior. And most importantly, protection for Earth. If we do this, if we save them, they owe us everything. Carter was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Emily. You really believe we can win? I believe we are the only ones who can, Emily said. Our ancestors beat them once. We can do it again. President Collins looked around the table. All in favor of offering aid to the council? The vote was close. But humanity chose to be saviors instead of executioners. Robert hoped it was the right choice. Commander Helen Price gripped the armrest of her captain's chair as her ship shook from another impact. Around her, the bridge crew worked frantically at their stations. Alarms blared. Damage reports scrolled across screens faster than anyone could read them. Outside the viewports, space burned with weapons fire. Hull breach on Deck 7, her tactical officer shouted. Sealing now. Shield generators are at 30%. Helen ignored the chaos and focused on the tactical display. The final battle had been raging for 6 hours. Her fleet, a combined force of human ships and retrofitted council vessels, surrounded the hollow world ship. The enemy's main vessel was enormous, larger than Earth's moon. A biomechanical horror that pulsed with stolen psychic energy. 3 months had passed since humanity agreed to help the Council. 3 months of intense training. Human officers had taught alien crews how to fight without telepathy. How to use jamming signals and false sensor readings. How to make decisions independently instead of relying on psychic coordination. Most importantly, they had taught the aliens something humans had always excelled at: unpredictability. All ships execute Protocol Ghost, Helen commanded into the communications channel. Protocol Ghost was pure human invention. Every ship in the fleet would act independently, following no set pattern. They would attack from random angles, retreat without warning, regroup in unexpected locations. To a psychic enemy that relied on predicting intentions, it would be like fighting smoke. The fleet scattered. Hollow ships tried to pursue but found themselves chasing targets that vanished and reappeared elsewhere. Council vessels that had been easy prey 3 months ago now fought with chaotic human tactics. A Kalari cruiser appeared behind a hollow destroyer and fired point-blank before jumping away. A squadron of Rex fighters used electronic countermeasures to make the enemy sensors see phantom ships everywhere. Helen watched the hollow world ship on her display. That was the real target. As long as it survived, the hollows could coordinate their forces and continue feeding on psychic energy. The fleet could destroy 1,000 smaller ships, but the world ship would simply create more. "Commander, we are receiving a transmission from Admiral Morgan," her communications officer said. "Put him through." Jack Morgan's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired but determined. "Commander Price, the Council Command Staff has authorized the final strike. You are cleared for suicide protocol." Helen felt her stomach tighten. Suicide protocol. She had known this moment would come. "Understood, Admiral. My crew is ready." "Helen," Morgan said, dropping formality, "you do not have to do this. We can find another way." "No, sir, we cannot," Helen replied. "The world ship's defenses are too strong. Nothing short of a direct antimatter strike to its core will destroy it. And the only way to deliver that strike is to get past its shields." "By ramming your ship through them," Morgan finished quietly. "Yes, sir." Helen looked around her bridge. Every member of her crew had volunteered for this mission. They all knew what it meant. "We discussed it as a crew. We voted. This is what we choose." Morgan was silent for a moment. "Then Godspeed, Commander. Earth will remember what you did here." The transmission ended. Helen stood up and addressed her crew. "Everyone knows the plan. We load every antimatter charge we have into the forward compartments. We accelerate to maximum speed. We punch through the world ship's shields and detonate inside its core. The explosion will collapse their command network. The invasion will fail. And we will die," someone said from the navigation station. "Yes," Helen agreed. "We will die. But billions will live. The entire galaxy will live. That is a trade I can accept." Around the bridge, heads nodded. No one argued. No one asked to be transferred to another ship. They had made their choice. "Commander," her tactical officer said suddenly, 50 other ships are changing course. They are matching our trajectory. Moving into suicide formation." Helen's eyes widened. She pulled up the tactical display. 50 ships, human and alien both, were accelerating toward the world ship. Their captains had made the same decision she had. "Open a channel to all ships," Helen ordered. "All vessels, this is Commander Price. You do not need to do this. My ship can complete the mission alone." "With respect, Commander," a Kalari captain replied. "You taught us that humans fight together. That you never leave anyone to face death alone. We learned that lesson well." A Vrex captain added, "Besides, if 50 ships attack, the Hollows will not know which one carries the real payload. Better odds for success." Helen smiled despite the tears in her eyes. 3 months ago, these species had wanted humanity expelled from the galaxy. Now they were willing to die beside humans. "All ships, thank you. Accelerate to attack speed. For the galaxy." "For the galaxy," 50 voices echoed. The ships surged forward as one. The hollow world ship's defenses activated, trying to track which vessel posed the real threat. Energy beams lanced out. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes. But the survivors kept coming. Helen's ship shook violently as they hit the outer shields. Metal screamed. Hull plates tore away. But they were through. The world ship's biomechanical core filled the view screen. Massive organs pulsed with stolen energy. Neural pathways the size of cities branched across its interior. "Impact in 10 seconds, the navigator announced. Helen sat down in her chair one last time. She thought of Earth, of blue oceans and green forests, of her family, of the billions of humans who would never know her name but would live because of what happened here. 5 seconds. She thought of Dr. Emily Foster and her ancient tablets, of ancestors who had survived the hollows and passed down their resistance through countless generations, of humanity's long journey from hunted prey to galactic protectors. 2 seconds. Helen smiled. Not bad for a species of voids. The ship struck the core. Antimatter met matter. For a brief instant, a new sun burned at the center of the hollow world ship. Then silence. Across the galaxy, hollow vessels went dark. Their biomechanical systems shut down. The psychic energy they had stolen dissipated into space. The invasion was over. Admiral Morgan stood on the bridge of the Defiance and watched the readings. 50 ships gone. Thousands of brave souls lost. But billions saved. Sir, his communications officer said quietly, we are receiving a transmission from the Council. Speaker Valen wants to address the fleet. Morgan nodded. Valen's face appeared on every screen in every surviving ship. His 3 eyes were wet with what Morgan realized were tears. Commander Price and her crew have given us victory. But they have given us something more important. They have given us a revelation. The speaker paused. 3 months ago, we learned that humans might be descended from our ancient enemy. We responded with fear and suspicion. We were wrong. Humans are not the Hollows. They are the children of those who survived the Hollows. And today they taught us what that means. Morgan listened as Valen continued. For 200,000 years, we have maintained peace through psychic unity, through shared thoughts and connected minds. We believed that was the only way civilizations could coexist. But humans showed us something different. They showed us that beings who cannot read each other's minds can still fight together, can still sacrifice for each other, can still care. The speaker's voice grew stronger. Dr. Emily Foster has discovered new evidence in the ancient archives. Evidence that proves what humans truly are. 200,000 years ago, after the Hollows were defeated, humanity left the galactic community. They chose exile. They settled on a distant world and erased their own history. Do you know why? Morgan held his breath. Because our ancestors needed time to heal, Valen said. The galaxy was broken. Civilizations were shattered. Humanity believed that their presence, their immunity to psychic connection, would prevent true peace. So they left. They became watchers at the edge of space. Guardians who would return only if the Hollows escaped. They sacrificed their place among the stars so we could rebuild. Morgan felt something break inside his chest. Not pain. Something else. Recognition. Understanding. Humanity did not abandon us, Valen concluded. They protected us. For 200,000 years they waited in silence. And when we needed them most they came home. Not as conquerors. Not as the enemy returned. But as the guardians they always were. The transmission ended. Around Morgan, his bridge crew stood in stunned silence. Sir, someone finally whispered. Is it true? Did our ancestors really do that? Morgan thought of Commander Price flying into the sun. Of human crews teaching aliens how to survive. Of a species that had every reason to hate the galaxy but chose to save it anyway. Yes, he said. I think they did.